Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on another episode of Japan by River Cruise. My name's Bobby Judo, I'm here in Fukuoka.
It's a pleasure to have you cruising with us. My name's Ollie Horn, and I'm calling you this week from a place called Miri. It's getting weirder every week. Where am I?
This week we've got another great episode. We're going to be talking about Fukushima and its radioactive waste, which is still in the news despite it almost being 2020. Radiation doesn't go away, apparently. Also, Ollie's got your River Cruise recommendation this week, right, Ollie?
Yes, this week is a recommendation that's very close to my heart. This week is a river cruise that goes across the breadth of Japan, celebrating England's victory in the Rugby World Cup. We're not sure when that's going to be scheduled.
Also, ahead of the Olympics, you know Japan is trying to catch up with the rest of the modern world, and we're going to tell you how the river cruise industry is no different. They're putting out an effort to modernize. They're looking to ban smoking, allow guests with tattoos, and modernize their dietary options, at least according to a press release fax we received this morning. But first, soap talk.
Bobby Judo,
Yo.
birthday boy.
Happy birthday.
How's your week been?
Good. I am
Birthday to Bobby.
36, and if anybody is listening and they want to use this stock Japanese joke, this is an original joke, but it works very, very well. In Japanese, when you want to tell somebody your age, you can say, "いや、36歳ですが、気持ちはまだまだ34, which means I'm 36 years old, but inside I still feel like I'm 34.
That's funny.
Works very well. I suggest you use it.
Do you want to? You know what I always used to do when people would ask me my age, because people wouldn't believe how young I was, or they thought I was young, and then they would ask me how old I am. Ask me how old I am in Japanese.
おいくつですか?
Okay, that's annoying. You're gonna have to ask a different way for my joke to work.
Oh, I'm gonna have to ask the super elementary way that people always ask because they
assume I can't speak
you
Japanese.
speak
Yeah,
at a childlike level.
right.
何歳ですか?
Boku wa tensai desu.
Okay, so the joke that I recommended is one that I thought of. The one that Ali recommended is a joke that every elementary school child has thought of.
Yeah, well,
It means tensai means genius. So it's a play on words with the idea that you could be 10 sai years old, or you could be tensai, which is genius.
that joke would work particularly well if you were 10, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's why every 10-year-old in Japan does it.
Oh, okay. Well, it always worked for me.
So Ollie's best jokes are the ones that everybody already does.
Yeah, but that's how good I am at delivery. How's your birthday week been? How does it feel to be 36 in Japan?
It feels fine. It feels fine. It's another I talk to people who, most of the people that I work with are significantly older, like they're in their later 40s or they're in their 50s, and when you're really young, they go, "Oh, you're so young, you're so young." And then when you get to like your late 20s, your mid 30s, people start to say stuff like, "Ah, kore kara desu ne," which means like, "Oh, this is when everything starts." But there's this element to it of like, "You've still got time left."
Right, right. It's like, I think you're not doing as well as you hoped, are you, son?
I think they say it with an air of like, "Oh, well, that's the time in my life when everything started to get busier." That's when you have your kids are starting to get older and your career is starting to move and this and that. And they mean it in this sense that like this is where things will start to get more serious, get busier, get bigger. But I always say, いや、36って言ったらみんなこれからって言うんだけど、私は、ここまで来ただけでだいぶ疲れてます。Which is like everyone always says, "Oh, it's from here on out," and I'm like, "Yeah, but just getting here has kind of exhausted me."
I want to say that kind of thing to a 60-year-old, like there's a Love FM presenter which is in his mid 80s.
Oh yeah, Matsui-san. Right?
Matsui-san, right? I next time I meet him and he has a significant birthday, I'm going to say that to him. How old are you this week? I'm 87. I'm 87 years old. Yeah,これからですね. So did you do anything to celebrate your birthday?
No, I had work. Actually had a crazy job yesterday. There's this thing called the Fukuoka Kenjin Kai. Kaigai Fukuoka Kenjin Kai. Kaigai means overseas, or I guess worldwide in this sense. And Fukuoka Kenjin is people who trace their lineage to Fukuoka, and a Kai is like a group. And so they held their World Summit, their conference in Fukuoka this year. which makes sense because that's where they're from.
I was going to say, I'm really glad that they managed to win that bid again this year.
Well, they do it every 3 years, and 1 out of every 2 times is in Fukuoka. So the Fukuoka hosts it every 6 years, and they're from all over the world. I think there's like 20 countries represented. They're Canada, Mexico, Paraguay, like 3 different groups in Hawaii. There's
but all the people there have something to do with Fukuoka.
They all can trace their roots to Fukuoka. So some of them don't speak Japanese. Some of them are like 5th generation, whatever country they're in. Some of them are like 1st generation, like their company transferred them to Peru last week.
Okay.
So it's a real big mix of people, but it's a big deal. And so they had me MC the Kinen Shikiten, the commemorative opening ceremony, and then the welcome reception. And there's like 600 some people there, and the governor of Fukuoka came, like all the mayors of the different cities in Fukuoka came. And so when they have a big event, they invite all these prominent people, and people who can't come send something called the shukuden, which is like a letter of congratulations, a message of celebration. And so I had to read a letter from the financial minister, Aso Taro.
Did that letter come through the event, or did they send it through japanbyrivercruise.com?
Both. They did it through both. So I had
just to make sure I got there.
I had a printed out copy, on hand, because they don't want me like looking on my devices while I'm emceeing. But
and what did the letter say?
Taro, thanks. Cho yobiste. It's a really disrespectful, a very disrespectful way to refer to the vice prime minister kind of guy. Used to be prime minister, right?
We can't confirm nor deny that he listens to the podcast, though, so don't worry.
Yeah.
I also noticed on Facebook that you did another event where you were talking about making a town that is accessible for all. You were on a panel discussion.
Oh, yeah. Universal design. It's kind of, in Japan, the buzzwords are barrier-free and universal design, but I was on a panel, and it's so funny to me because it's
barrier-free with the exception of the immigration system.
So this is about making it's machizukuri. It's city planning and city design with an eye to making everybody of all different walks of life comfortable in this city. And so they had a representative of the local LGBT organization. They had a guy who's a Paralympic athlete, and then
they had someone who tans. Did they? All the tropes from last week's episode.
I was the straight white male, but in Japan I represent diversity.
Yeah, and what kind of things did you say the town needs to change to accommodate you more?
Well, it wasn't so much like what the town needs to change. We're supposed to be kind of like praising the town for how universal its design is and how forward-thinking Fukuoka is, which it really is. I mean, they do a lot. They're one of the cities that does the most to encourage foreign startup companies to bring their business over. Foreign
that's a lot of tokenism,
exchange students. Yes and no. I mean, there are people who make their lives off of that, but yeah, I mean, a lot of it is for reputation for show. But so they asked me mostly about my experiences as a foreigner in Japan and the ways that we get treated, and I think I talked more about residential foreigners than tourists, and the idea that the current generation, you can't tell who somebody is or what their identity is just by the fact that they don't look Japanese.
Right.
And so I relate experiences of like not being allowed into restaurants. I actually told your story about being pushed as though it were my story. So thanks for that.
Did you?
I did. I totally did.
How did it go?
Well, I told it, so it went better than when you tell it.
Have I talked about this story on the podcast? I think I have.
A couple weeks back. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. This was when basically a Japanese guy, like I say Japanese guy, the fact that his nationality I suppose is relevant. A waiter just pushed me out of the way in the middle of a party that he was waiting at.
Yeah,
and
more
when
than
I was
the fact that he was just a Japanese guy, he was in the service industry and you were a customer, and he just assumed that you wouldn't speak his language, so he physically moved you out of the way.
And then I was like, "Did you just push me, man?" And he was like, "I didn't realize you spoke Japanese." Did you speak about, as a foreign resident, how difficult it is to separate your trash into the different trash bags, and how you're looking for more help from the local Japanese residents who have a native and intuitive sense for trash separation?
I didn't, but they're probably going to do another talk show, so maybe we can spend like 30, 40 minutes on that. That'd be great.
My top tip is "Ganbareba subete no gomi ga moeru to omoimasu," which is what I used to say all the time. Which is like in Japan, you split your trash into well, it depends on the prefecture actually. But
Burnable,
in
combustible,
Fukuoka,
and non-combustible, basically,
yeah,
right?
combustible, non-combustible, right? And I was like, that's a distinction which I see as a challenge. If you try hard enough, everything's combustible.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, another thing that I like about Fukuoka is when there was the proliferation of signs, which was they changed accessible toilet. They changed from disabled toilet to accessible toilet, which is a good start, right? Because you shouldn't be highlighting the disability. You should be highlighting the fact that it's accessible.
What was the? Yeah, sorry.
I'm talking about the English translation,
Okay,
right?
the
Was
English
accessible.
translation.
Then they changed accessible toilet to multi-purpose toilet, which was a bad translation of the Japanese, which was multi-use toilet, and so it always
Tamokuteki, right? Tamokuteki is multiple.
yeah, exactly, right. Tamokuteki, right? Multiple uses, really.
They use the same thing for like a gymnasium. They call it Tamokuteki Hall because you could have a speech there, you could have a volleyball game there, you could have a basketball game
exactly.
there.
And
Yeah.
that's what I find really funny, that like you know the fact that in a hall you could do basically anything, right? You could do your Zumba class. The fact that a toilet's going, hey, can I get in on this? If you need to do your juggling practice, I've got you.
Well, it is multi-purpose because it's not only that multiple people can use it, it's you could also use it to change your kids, you could use it to breastfeed, you could use it to change clothes.
But that's all stuff which can just be done in the female toilet, can't it?
Let's look
There
at
we
our
go.
mail. Let's look at our mail.
Okay,
We got it.
let's
We're
look at our
back,
male, not
we're
our
back
female.
back on track. We've got the Bryans again.
Come
Brian
on.
from Fukuoka.
Have
in
we got-
reference?
Sorry,
the
Bobby,
most-
just before you start.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bobby, are there any emails which aren't from one of the Bryans? One of the original Bryans?
This week?
Yeah.
No. Only the one from Zaimu Daijin Asotaro.
I am this close to giving up. If people, and the thing is, I know other people listen to this, right? It's not like we don't get stats. For Christ's sake, stop this, right? Someone whose name isn't Brian, who doesn't live in Fukuoka, please email into the show.
So that we can call you a Brian.
Yeah. I've said enough offensive things this week already for you to make a complaint.
I don't know. I think actually Brian from Fukuoka, he actually has kind of a worthwhile little joke here in his mail. It says, in reference to the most recent episode about blood donations, I'm curious to know how it's possible for a medical professional to draw blood from an otaku's erection if their junk is all pixelated. Which is okay. The better one, the more worthwhile one, I think, is it seems to me like the more elegant solution is to prepare a bucket to catch the blood from their explosive nosebleed. Now, this is high-quality Japan trivia on display here. Do you know this, Ollie?
No.
Ah, okay. So Brian has
Educate me,
outbrine
Brian.
Ollie. So when
Something like, hang on, something like, Brianよりも Brian らしいですね.
you're more Brian than Brian.
Yeah.
It's an anime and manga trope that when someone is aroused, they get a nosebleed. And so in all of these little horny anime things that we were talking about last week, whenever the guy walks in on a girl in the bathroom or catches a glimpse through her window and sees her naked or whatever, he gets an explosive nosebleed because that's what happens when you are aroused. Does that not happen to you?
Sorry, Bobby, I was just grabbing some tissue. Just got a bit of a nosebleed. No, it's never happened to me. Well, I was told at school that there's only two ways that you can get a nosebleed, by being punched in the nose, or by picking your nose, and it was a way of shaming people who had nosebleeds, I'm sure, because both of those are undignified things to either do or have done to you.
Yeah.
Are nosebleeds more common in some countries than others? Is this a genetic thing?
They
I'm
might
trying to think
be.
if I'm trying right now.
I
I'm
don't
going through
know.
all the races in my mind and imagining them all with a bleeding nose. All
No,
seems to work. Seems to work out for me. Anyway, listeners, right now, try it. Go through a little roller deck of different races and just imagine them all with a nosebleed.
well, yeah,
Yeah, all seems fine,
everybody
doesn't it?
bleeds. Everybody bleeds. But I don't know where the. I would actually be interested in looking into where the you get a nosebleed when you're aroused trope came from, because I don't think that's a thing that actually happens, does it?
I've not experienced arousal in my life. Did Brian, the other Brian,
Yeah,
the other
we
original
got one.
Brian?
We got Brian in Fukuoka. You know the one. Also, they're engaging with the content, so that's good. He says, "Hey guys, someone from the Japanese Red Cross must be listening to the podcast because I went searching for those posters with Uzaki-chan and couldn't find a one. Oh, and when I went in to donate blood, they took it from my dick." Um, so yeah, engaging with the content, making a joke, all stuff we enjoy.
It's
But the thing,
Brian's. We appreciate you, but we also resent you. I think I think that's the sentiment.
well, I mean, you do because they're funnier than you. But but this thing about couldn't find the Uzaki-chan posters is not only not true, but actually like the Red Cross has like logged this as a victory. They've taken this as a win. There's like a new campaign with Uzaki-chan, and they've started saying that she's, nettojo de chou ninki. she's become super popular on the internet.
That's really, really funny.
Yeah.
Talk about turning a scandal into a PR opportunity.
Yeah,
That's
Red
really,
Cross
really.
trolling at its finest.
I think we should have a look at the news in its entirety. Let's see if we can cover that in 10 minutes.
Cool.
Right, Bobby. I'm going to be honest with you. There's a lot in the news. I think we should just pick on one story this week.
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot going on. Which story should we do?
Maybe the one which you referenced at the top of the show. The story
Seems
which
so predictable. So predictable.
I know. Well, the Bryans are busy people.
Yeah.
This is just a headline you don't want to read, is it? 91 bags of radioactive waste swept into rivers. That's a story that you click on, isn't it? Japan's Environment Ministry says dozens of bags containing radioactive soil were swept into rivers following a powerful typhoon last month. The dangerous waste was produced as a result of the 2011 nuclear disaster, which, as listeners know, was in Fukushima, which is ages away from Fukuoka, but that doesn't stop people confusing them.
Right.
We're mentioning Fukuoka because that's where Bobby lives. That's where I used to be famous. Officials say they have confirmed that 90 bags in Fukushima and one in Tochigi Prefecture were swept away.
Yeah.
Then 25 of the bags were found empty.
They were swept away by Typhoon Hagibis.
This
is totally unrelated, but can I tell you something really sad?
Yeah.
I thought for a while that the typhoon was called Habagus. I think I saw somebody had posted like a graphic where they had misspelled it, and so I thought that the typhoon was called Habagus, not Hagibis. Habagus. And so I had this whole joke about Habagus the typhoon, and that I was tweeting out that it was like Habagus the typhoon. It's fucking huge, and then I realized that I was just spelling it wrong.
Right. Well, anyway, this typhoon has caused a huge amount of destruction. I know on the episode 3 weeks ago we somewhat belittled it because it was on its way, and I made distasteful jokes, and you said, "Let's hope that the destruction is not so bad that we regret belittling it." But like Shinkansen trains weren't moved to higher ground, and like that ruined like literally billions of dollars of
yeah, they have to
infrastructure.
Scrap them. Yeah. But yeah, I think the way that I always kind of judge how bad a disaster is whether or not TV goes off regular programming, because that's like the most immediate thing in my life. When the Fukushima happened, the earthquake that caused Fukushima and the tsunami in 2011, all of the regular TV broadcasts went off for like weeks.
Well,
And
Uh,
for the prior Hagibis, they didn't go off much at all. Like it was like they would report about the disaster and they would report about the damage during the news hours, and then they would have their variety programs on right after.
Right. Okay. I'm not sure if we've spoken about this, but when Fukuoka had an earthquake, or rather Kumamoto had an earthquake, and Fukuoka was still kind of on the
Yeah,
you
try
know
to make it sound like there was an earthquake in Fukuoka and you're not just talking at your butt.
well, I mean, the epicenter was in Kumamoto, right? But I
Yeah.
certainly got woken up by it, and like stuff fell off my shelves. Like it was the first time I was like, oh, this feels like an
That
earthquake.
happened. Yeah, you're right.
It did happen,
You're right.
and
You're right.
and the only reason that I mentioned this is you're saying like regular programming changes. Love FM, which was the station that I used to work for, were so desperate to have someone come in and read the emergency announcements in English that they called me. And it was very clear from the tone of the voice of the producer who called to say, we need someone to sit in the studio all day and read the emergency announcements in English, that I was absolutely the last person that they'd called. Like the tone was, we've called everyone, they're either not going to come in or not available. This is not an opportunity for you to get your widest possible audience to crack jokes. There are people that need to know where clean drinking water is, and you might be the only person that ends up telling them this.
I'm not sure if that's a level of desperation that I'm familiar with, because like I occasionally will have things that I want to talk to you about, like if I'm having trouble or if I have something that I need a consultation about or this and that, and I always have to preface it with like, Ollie, I'm gonna need you to not make a joke for 2 minutes.
Yeah, right.
And you never make it. You never make
it. But these I'm not sure. Have you ever done this job when there's a disaster on the radio? But there's this book, right, which has got kind of ready-made scripts that have already been written, and it's like a fill-in-the-blanks exercise. But it's really morbid because the scripts are like, there have been, and then there's a blank, and then just before you go on air, someone in the newsroom goes, put the number 5, then you write the number 5, and then you go, there have been 5 confirmed deaths. And it's really sad. And then this book is like a doomsday book, because the first couple of pages are like, there's an earthquake, there has been an earthquake, there's some inconveniences, to then further through these sheets is like, here are the locations of the drinking water and giving advice on how to find water, where you can get wind-up radios. And then like towards the end of this book, like there's stuff like, well, we're all dead now. It's like, I don't know why I'm still bothering reading this.
Situations get progressively worse, right?
And also, what I found absolutely absurd was this radio studio is a glass studio, right? You used to work inside it in a shopping center, and I was like, are you really
big department store? It's on the first floor, and it's got like all glass windows into the actual broadcast studio, so people who are walking by outside through the park can see you.
Yeah, it's like a zoo, and I was reading stuff like, make sure that you're not surrounded by items which can shatter, such as glass. Tape up your windows
while sitting in a glass box
from inside a glass box. And I was like, is this cool? But obviously, you're not paid enough to actually stay in the studio. Like I did have that moral dilemma. Like, what if an actual proper earthquake came? Do I rise to the occasion and stay in the studio and do these announcements in English, or do I go, I'm not paid enough for this, I'm out? Yeah. It's like when you're on an airplane and they come up to you and they're like, in the event of an emergency landing, you're responsible for opening this door. It's like, yeah, fine, and it's your job to help out the other passengers. It's like, at this stage, I think there's going to be limited means of accountability. Obviously, I'm out first.
Right. Like, well, it's all good. I'm happy to be responsible while the plane is flying in the air and there's no problem. But in the event of an emergency, screw you guys. Let's get back to the river stuff real quick, because we care very much about that. And there are 91 bags of radioactive waste swept into the rivers by Typhoon Hagibis. And it said they were stockpiled since 2011 at a temporary storage site since 2011.
Certainly was temporary, wasn't it? The typhoon made quick work of that.
And this is honestly the first time I've seen Fukushima and the radioactive waste stuff in the news in a while. And part of I know it pops up every once in a while, but like I feel like it's not in the news nearly as much as it should be.
I read, right, relatively recently, there are still people that like haven't been properly rehoused, right? Like the
Oh no, yeah,
government
of course, of course.
it's atrocious, really.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't think you and I have got any. Go on.
Let me. I've been looking at this article, and it says the officials are commenting. They say at least 25 of the bags were found empty, meaning that the tainted soil was carried away in floodwaters. But the officials add that radiation levels around the sites remain unchanged. That's good. The radiation levels have remained unchanged. They are still currently sitting at holy fuck.
Didn't Chris Broad do a YouTube video from the from Fukushima quite recently?
I don't know who that is.
Chris Broad, abroad in Japan.
Oh, abroad in Japan. I don't know.
Is that is his surname, right? Broad. I'm not.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Well, anyway.
I got to be honest. I never really watched any YouTuber who was not me.
Got it. You know he has a podcast as well.
As long as it's not about rugby or river cruises, I think we're okay.
No, I think it's about pedalos or something. Whatever. Swan boats. Swan boat reviews. Swan boats. This is a bit of Japanese. I learned the word swan boat in Japanese before I learned it in English.
What's it in Japanese?
Swan boat.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty. What's the word? It's pretty. I just totally lost an English word. Apparent? And that's a pretty apparent. Huh.
But I don't think I've been on a swan boat outside of Japan. Right. This is an appeal to the listenership. Have you ever been on a boat, right? Like a pedalo kind of boat that is the shape of a swan, and you're inside the swan.
So I'd never heard of the word pedalo, but I have been on the swan boats in Japan a lot of times.
We've been on them together.
I think we went in a canoe, didn't we?
Oh yeah, we might have. No, we did. It wasn't the canoe we did. We did the regular boat.
Okay.
And people were staring at us because there's a lake in Fukuoka called Ohori. Well, there's a park in Fukuoka called Ohori Park, which has a lake in the middle, and you can like take boats out in a romantic sense. And we just sometimes did it because it's not that expensive and it's a nice way to pass the time. But people didn't quite get what two grown white men were doing in a boat together.
Well, I think part of that was I feel
kissing.
like I remember that you were singing.
Really?
Yeah, one of us was singing.
I think it might have been you.
It could have been, yeah. But the point is, I mean, it wasn't just that we were two men. I think we were a spectacle.
Well, yeah, of course, we're a spectacle. Well, in that case, to play us out from this episode will be a reenactment of me and Bobby in one of those boats. Imagine the scene; it's post-apocalyptic. Somehow this radioactive waste has made it to Ohori Park. We are boating around it. We are the only two members of society that valiantly are doing the cleanup operation, and we are singing this song. So this is a bit of podcast trivia. That is actually me and Bobby singing that.
Thank you for listening. Glad you made it this far. Please send us some messages. Bryans, we love you. And see you next week on Japan by River Cruise.
Just going to interject there. The Brian's I love you sentiment is the sentiment of Bobby Judo in a personal capacity, not as a representative of the show.